Hey guys, it's Bethany, your crafty BFF, and today I am on with a different type of video. A friend of mine a while back had asked me to do this video, and I kind of put it off, but because I get a lot of questions about making shaker embellishments, I decided to just go ahead and do this video because I thought it would be very helpful to new crafters and even older crafters who are still intimidated by shaker embellishments to do everything with you on camera. We're going to cut everything out. I'm going to explain to you what I'm cutting, um, the process in which I cut, the products that I use, and my methods for assembling. So we're going to do this from start to finish. We're going to cut everything out and assemble a shaker embellishment here on camera today. I'm going to give you my tips and tricks along the way, and I am hopeful that this will be an extremely helpful video. I do have a video that I did probably like 6 or so months ago, assembling a shaker embellishment. So I will link that in the description box down below so you can check that video out as well. And I've been told that by several people that it was a helpful video as well. So you won't hurt to check that out. And yeah, I I I really enjoy helping people, so I'm hoping this video helps somebody anyways. Okay, so we're going to start with the products that I use. First off, my machine, and I want to preface this by saying that every machine is different. At least that's what I've come to learn. I have a Spellbinders Platinum 6. I bought this about a year ago. Before this I had a previously owned Sizzix. I don't even remember the style or the model of it. It was a Sizzix, and it worked well until it quit working. And so then I got this one, and um I've noticed, like, by talking with other crafters online, that even if we have the same brand machine, they don't always function the same. And I think it's because it's not really an exact science. These machines, they're, an older technology. They're it's basically the rollers. You have the rollers and the gears in there, and if the rollers are not precisely the exact same measurements, between every machine, which I doubt they are. I mean, they're probably close to it, but not exactly. And so you have that issue, like if the rollers are tighter or looser compared to another machine. And then over time, your machine definitely loosens up. The more die cutting you do, the more it loosens. Because when I had my Sizzix, I always I always made my shakers with 5mm foam from Hobby Lobby. And when I got this machine brand new, the 5mm foam wouldn't even start to fit through the machine. So I had to go back to the 2mm foam, and what I did was cut the 2mm foam twice, layered them up, and glued them together to get myself a nice thick shaker. But I'm so glad that my machine does the 5mm foam now. So I get my foam at Hobby Lobby. The brand is Silly Winks. It's in the same aisle where you find like the felt squares that they sell and the faux fur that they sell. It's $1.99 for a 12 by 18-inch sheet. And like I said, it's the 5mm. I do have an example of the 2mm foam that Hobby Lobby sells. I have it in pink here. It comes in the same size, 12 by 18, and it's 99 cents. But guys, look at this difference. I mean, it's night and day. This is thin and flimsy, and even when you cut it out twice and layer it together, it's still really flimsy. This has some density to it. It's stable, at least a lot more stable than the 2 millimeter. So I swear by it. Some people swear by the Dollar Tree foam board, but I don't like it. I don't like trying to cut it into smaller pieces to run through my machine. It's a headache, and I prefer my 5 millimeter. But to each his own, right? Now, as far as acetate goes, I ordered this brand, don't know how to pronounce it, from Amazon. And I always purchase the 4 mil. So it's 0.1 millimeters. It's the smallest, thinnest acetate that this brand carries, because they do carry up to a 10 mil. However, I ordered different brands from Amazon, and they were super thin and flimsy and did not make good shakers. So when I ordered this, and I liked that it made decent shakers, I stuck with it and never looked back. So I don't know, I can't vouch for the other thicknesses of this brand, but I do like the 4 mil, and I like it. Like I said, it makes a decent shaker, and you can emboss it. I've heard other crafters say that that either they couldn't emboss their acetate because it was too thin, and the embossing folder actually cut through where it was supposed to emboss. It actually cut. And then I've heard crafters say that their acetate was too thick and it didn't leave the the embossing detail that it should have left. So I like my 4 mil from Amazon. I know I can link the Amazon stuff. I don't know if I can link the Hobby Lobby foam, but I will try. This is my Crafters Essential Easy C tape. It comes in different colors. I picked it up on SimonsSaysStamp.com. It was $6 or $7. I've had this for over a year, and there's still quite a bit left. I prefer this to washi tape or masking tape, or even scrapbook.com's mint tape. I've had bad experiences with all of those where it tore my paper. So I stick with this stuff. And we'll get to that in a minute. I'm trying to think. Excuse my mismatched plates. I've got 2 different color plates, and they're both very well used. And I think that does it for the materials I use. I want to talk about the 2 different kinds of shaker dies that are available. You've got this one. This is a good example of my favorite kind of shaker die. It comes in 2 separate pieces, and this one has just one cutting line, so it will cut this entire image, excluding this little hole here in the handle of the cup, because that's supposed to be there. But it will cut out one solid image of the teacup. And then it comes with this piece that will cut out just the frame. So it's got this outer cutting. My hands are dirty from working with this machine. I'm so sorry. What the heck is going on? I think it's okay. I have dirty hands. Hold on just a second. I have some hand wipes here. I'm just going to clean them up real quick, because I was messing with my machine before we got started. So I think the oil from the gears got on my fingers. So sorry about that. Didn't even realize it till I saw them in the camera. Okay, like I was saying, it also comes with the frame piece. So it has the outer cutting edge, and then it has this inner cutting edge. So it's going to cut out everything between these 2 cutting lines, and then it's not going to cut out this space here. It's going to leave this space empty. as well as the handle, because that's supposed to be there. And then you just layer your frame pieces on top of your solid piece, and you've got a nice shaker embellishment. However, this is the other kind of shaker die on the market, and not my favorite, but a lot of my favorite dies do come like this, and I got to deal with it. So we're going to focus on this one today, because I think this is really what starts to confuse people, is when they come like this. When you first get it, you get them these two pieces, and it comes with some like layering pieces for the candle, but we're not worried about that. We're only worried about the main shaker embellishment today. It comes with these two pieces welded together with those little tiny pieces of metal there on the edges all around, and that's all fine and dandy, but then you have to take them apart, right? Because this is your solid image. Like this one is your solid image of a teacup. This is your solid image of the birthday cake. It has just the one cutting line all the way around, right? So if you want to make a shaker, you have to take this piece. If you don't, this is a side note, if you don't want to make a shaker, you just cut this out, and then you cut the icing part out and just layer it on top to make a flat birthday cake embellishment, right? So, however, we're making a shaker, so we need these two pieces to fit back together just the way they came when they were welded together to make our frame. When you put them together, then you have the two cutting lines like you do on this piece, right? This has the outer cutting edge and the inner cutting edge, and then when you put these two together, you have your outer cutting edge and your inner cutting edge. I hope that makes sense. So when you have this piece, you're gonna cut out three things. You're gonna cut out, at least I cut out, okay, and it makes sense to do it. At least I think it makes sense to do it the way I want. I do it because you want a nice sturdy embellishment. So I cut it out of 110-pound cardstock. If you don't have 110-pound cardstock, I highly suggest just cutting it out in like a 65-pound cardstock. And then you're going to cut it out of your pattern paper or solid color cardstock that you want your cake to be. Today, we're going to cut it out of just this pink solid color cardstock, and that's going to be the base of our cake. But we're going to layer that on top of the 110-pound cardstock, so we've got a nice sturdy base embellishment. The last thing you cut out with this one is your acetate, because you need your acetate to be one solid piece, right? Okay, I know some of this is like really, really basic, but I want to explain it all so that anybody can understand. So once you've cut out your 110-pound base piece, the pattern paper or solid cardstock for your base piece, and your acetate, then you want to tape them together. And I find it very important. What I do is I kind of flip it upside down, because you want the tape on the non-cutting side of the die, right? So we're going to line this up the best we can, and we want an even amount of space all the way around the birthday cake, just like on this frame cutting die, there's an even amount of space all the way around the image, right? So you're going to line up the best you can. It's not going to be perfect, but the main thing is to just tape it together, get it as even all the way around as you can, and then leave it taped together, okay? Leave it taped together for the next three things that we're going to die cut. When you get it taped together and there's a nice even space all the way around, Hold on, that didn't line up so well for me, so let me try this again. I want to make sure we get a good cut. Um, you're gonna cut out 3 more layers, okay? You're gonna cut out a another layer in 110-pound or 65-pound if you don't have it, just a plain white cardstock. You're going to cut out the frame in the plain white cardstock. You're going to cut it out in the layering piece that you want on top. So for example, I'm going to cut it out of the 110-pound cardstock, and then I'm going to cut it out of this pretty pink glitter cardstock, and that's going to be the frame that everybody sees on the top layer. And then, very important, keep it taped together until you cut all 3 pieces of your 110-pound cardstock, your layering piece for your frame, and your foam. Okay, it's very important to keep them taped together and cut those 3 pieces back to back, because if you untape this now, if say you cut your glitter cardstock and then you untape it because you forgot you had to cut your foam. I do this sometimes, right? Like I'll cut my pieces out of my cardstock, and then I'm like, oh, I already untaped it and I need to still cut my foam. So at that point I would just start over, because there's no way I'm gonna, if I untape it, there's no way I'm gonna get the same exact line, frame alignment a second time. So I would just start completely over, because if you untape it and try to put it back together, your foam's not going to line up with your cardstock at all, and then it's going to be a really messy embellishment. So very important, keep it taped together and cut out those 3 layers: the plain white cardstock, your layering piece, and your foam. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start cutting this bad boy out. Like I said, I'm going to cut out my solid images first. So my base embellishment first. I have my 110-pound cardstock. If you, like I said, if you don't have the 110-pound, at least cut it out in the 65-pound cardstock so you have a nice solid base. If you cut it out of just a flimsy 1 layer of flimsy 65-pound cardstock, you're gonna have a flimsy embellishment, and nobody likes that, right? Okay, I'm gonna put this at an angle so that it cuts smoothly for me, and I'm just gonna run this through. For any type of cardstock, I'm a back and forth type of girl. I go backwards and forwards. This cutting plate is dirty. Oh, that's where all this dirt is coming from. It's this cutting plate. Let me clean this off real quick. I'm so sorry, guys. It doesn't really matter because I'm going to put a layer of the pink cardstock over that. You got to clean your plates every so often, because all that dust from the paper that you're cutting gets down in there and makes your plates dirty, and then it makes your die cuts dirty. Look at that. That's horrific. It wasn't doing that a minute ago. But of course, because I'm on camera, something's going to go wrong, right? Okay, I've cleaned my plate off, and now I'm going to cut my solid image. Oops, I knocked it out of my hand. I'm going to cut my solid birthday cake out of this pink textured cardstock. And this is going to be the layer that everyone sees. So I'm doing a backwards and forwards because it's just cardstock. Okay, that dust came off of the pink one, so that's good. So eventually when we get to the assembly part, I'm going to glue these two pieces together, just the pink right on top of the 110-pound white cardstock. So it's a nice, sturdy, solid embellishment. I'm actually going to get a different cutting plate. And this one is an extended plate, but I know it's clean and I don't want my acetate to get dirty. So we are going to cut our acetate. Like I said, I like to use this 4mm from Amazon. I'll have it linked in the description box down below. I just cut you know, a little rectangle off of the 12 by 12 sheet, and then I run it through my machine. Let's talk about if your machine isn't cutting acetate. There are some troubleshooting techniques that you can try. The first thing I would suggest is that you use a paper shim. So a paper shim is essentially a piece of just 65-pound cardstock that's the same size, relatively the same size as your cutting plate. And what you'll do is take that piece of cardstock, pretend this is a solid piece of cardstock, okay? You're going to put it under your bottom cutting plate, and then you're going to try to cut your acetate with that piece of paper under your bottom cutting plate. That gives it more tension as it rolls through the machine, and sometimes that's all you need. If one single shim doesn't work, you can try a second paper shim. So just another piece of 65-pound cardstock cut to about the same size of your cutting plate. Put it underneath your bottom cutting plate and roll it through, and that may fix your issue with cutting acetate. If that does not fix your problem with cutting acetate, I would suggest getting new plates, because the older they get, the more warped they get. They just don't cut the same. They don't cut properly. If you get new plates and you still can't cut acetate with your machine, my best friend for cutting acetate, sometimes it depends on the die. Sometimes the dies just don't want to cut with a regular cutting plate. So I love my Sizzix Chrome Precision base plate, and it says for intricate thinlits. So like doily dies, or like those jelly tote dies that have all those tiny little pieces that you have to poke out. My machine laughs at me if I try to cut the jelly tote out without the chrome plate. It's ridiculously difficult to cut it out without my chrome plate. So highly recommend the chrome plate. It is a bit pricey, but if you really want to make shakers and your machine's just not cutting it, this will do the trick. I can't guarantee it, but in my experience, it will do the trick. And it makes, like I said, it makes cutting intricate dies a breeze as well. I'll have this linked in the description box down below, just in case you're interested. I did pick mine up on Amazon a long time ago, so hopefully they still have it. Okay, guys, we've cut out with our base die. We cut out our 110-pound cardstock. We cut out our 65-pound cardstock. That is just the solid color cardstock, or it could be a pattern paper, just depending on the die and how you want it to look. It's up to you. And we cut out our solid piece of acetate. That's going to go there on top of that. So set those to the side. You're going to get the other piece of your die that came welded together with it, right? The layering piece. And we're going to line this up again. like I said, it's important to make sure there's a as even amount of space all the way around as possible, because you want a nice even frame. It will never be perfect, so don't stress about it not being perfect. Just do your best. This is what I'm going with. And we're going to leave it taped together. So important. Leave it taped together until we cut all 3 pieces that we need to cut, right? So let me move this precision plate out of the way since we talked about that. I'm going to cut this out of 110-pound cardstock. I have a piece right here. Just going to lay that down. Sorry, I have 2 completely different plates. I have my extended plate and then my regular plate on the bottom. But you do what you got to do, right? Okay, so when you tape them together and you run it through your machine, these 2 middle pieces are going to come out. You can just get rid of those. We don't need those. And then you're left with a frame that should, for the most part, line up with your solid image. No, it will. It will line up with your solid image here, like so. And now now you might choose to have white icing on your cake. However, I am going to have pink glitter icing on my cake. So I will explain why I cut the frame out of the white cardstock when we get to the assembly part, but I highly recommend it. So if you're making a shaker along with me, definitely cut it out. Just give it a try. It is extra die cutting, but I find it to be beneficial. It makes it easier in the end. So again, we're left with this. We can just remove these pieces. We don't need these. And you're left with the frame, which, because we left it taped together, we know it's the exact same size and shape and width of our first piece that we cut out in the white cardstock. So there's that lines up perfectly. And now we're going to cut out our foam. The number one important thing about cutting any foam, whether it be the 2mm or the 5mm or the foam board from Dollar Tree, is that you never roll it more than once through your machine. Don't roll back and forth. Just roll one way, one direction, and be done. And that is because if you roll it twice through the machine, it's going to press all the air out of the foam, and it's going to be flattened and not line up with your cardstock die cuts. So I ran it through once, and that's it. Now, if your machine does not cut the 5mm foam all the way through, I don't suggest using a shim for your foam because that's going to create too much tension. But if it cuts it like this, and you can see that it has come through to the other side, but it's not going to pull away easily, here's my tip. Here's what I do. Some of my dies don't, they do this. They don't cut completely all the way through and leave just these like little fibers attached there. Now the last thing you want to do is start yanking on this and pulling it apart because you're going to stretch your frame. This foam is, even though it is 5 millimeter, it is still delicate. It's still foam, and you don't want to go pulling on these middle pieces to get them out, and you don't want to pull this around it and stretch your frame. I hope that makes sense. So what I do in this case is I flip it over to the back, and you can see like there are just tiny little fibers in there that are not cut all the way through. So what I do is I hold this down and I take my little pokey tool and I just carefully go around the whole image. This way I'm not pulling on the frame of the cut of the foam, you know, I'm not pulling that and stretching it to be too big for our cardstock pieces. And now I can have a much easier time removing it from the foam. Okay, so do that, and then I do the same thing to the inside pieces. I don't want to stretch this too much, so I'm just using my pokey tool, going around and breaking up those little tiny fibers that are still hanging on. And like I said, my machine usually cuts all the way through the 5 millimeter foam, but it's just some dies it does this kind of thing. And that's one of the reasons I picked this die, is because I knew it would do this and I could give you this tip. So I knew I would have to do this, and I hope it makes your life a little easier. And like it's just so important not to, you don't want to run it through your machine too many times and press it too flat, and then you don't want to stretch it when you're taking apart the pieces, because then if it's too flat, it won't fit together, and if it's pulled out, stretched out too far, it's not going to fit together either. Excuse my raspy voice. I've been talking for a while today, and I've recorded a few videos, and on top of that, my autoimmune disorder is acting up, so please forgive my raspiness. But I decided that I needed to get this video done before I could go to sleep, because I was too excited to help people, I guess. I get that way. I get an idea in my head and I'm like, oh, I have to execute this idea before I go to sleep, or the world's gonna end or something. So forgive me while I take a drink. So now we have our foam piece, and it should line up with our cardstock pieces. Well, I have it backwards, so let me turn it around the right way. And here's the other thing, guys. Just know that it's foam, okay? It has a mind of its own, and it's never gonna line up with your cardstock die cuts completely perfectly. It's just not. Mine are literally never perfect, and nobody ever says anything. They don't seem to notice, or at least they don't point it out and say, oh my god, your shaker is disgusting. You know, so like I said, it never ever lines up perfectly. Just don't stress yourself out trying to get it perfect. It's never going to be perfect. There's going to be some either sticking out inside the die cut, or it's going to be sticking out outside the die cut. There's no way to get it perfect. I have come to learn that. Okay, we're done with the die cutting machine. And we're gonna start assembling. I want to make sure that I didn't miss anything. No, we're right on schedule. The bottom line is it'll never line up perfectly. just you know, only roll it through once, and be as careful as you can when you're removing it from the metal. If the foam's stuck in the metal die, be careful removing it from the die, and then use your little pokey tool to break up those fibers, and be very careful. Don't pull it and stretch it out. We talked about paper shims. Never roll more than once. We talked about if your machine's not cutting acetate. We talked about the precision chrome plate. I'm just making sure we didn't miss anything. Okay. Okay. Let's get to assembling because that is where we are in all my notes. Okay. So we have, let's review real quick. We've got 110-pound base die cut. We've got the layering die cut that we want our cake to be this color. If you were using a pattern paper, you'd pick the pattern paper and layer that on top of it. And the first thing we're going to do is glue these two pieces together. Like I said, it doesn't matter that that white piece got a little dirty using that old dirty cutting plate because we're going to cover it up with this pink cardstock anyways. I like to take my bone folder and make sure it's pressed down nicely, lined up evenly as possible. And then I usually use my mouse because it's about the size of an average die cut and it's heavy enough to help that glue bond together. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is glue our acetate to our frame piece. Not the white cardstock layer, but the frame piece. So whether you chose a different pattern paper, a solid color cardstock, or a specialty paper, this is the layer that's going to be on the very top and everyone sees, right? So you're going to add your glue to the back of this die cut, and then we're going to add our acetate to it. Now, I find it important to do a solid, small, solid line all the way around the edge of your die cut, especially when you're doing your acetate. You don't want too much glue because you don't want it to smear onto your acetate and make it dirty. And you don't want any gaps so the sequins can fall through, right? Like it can fall through if you don't do a solid, consistent layer all the way around. Now, when I first started doing shakers, what I would do is kind of like use my finger or one of those silicone spatulas that you use to apply face masks, and I would just spread my glue out so that it wasn't all like, especially if I thought I added too much glue, I would just smooth it over with my finger, and then I wouldn't have to worry about the glue smearing the acetate. However, if you do like I do and do a thin but consistent line all the way around your die cut, you're going to be golden. Okay, so something like this. Like right here, it's too close to the edge. And then over here, I did a little too much. So I'm going to just smooth that over. And here's my biggest tip before adding your acetate. you do not want to add your acetate while the glue is still wet. You want to let your glue start to get tacky before you put your acetate down. And that's important because if it's wet and sopping on your cardstock, then it's going to make your acetate slide and smear it and just be really messy. So while my glue is drying, I like to fuss with my acetate. So see my acetate, I don't know if you can see that, but there's like dust all over my acetate. That's pretty common. So I like, you know, flick it off. I do this, trying to get the dust particles off, so on and so forth. And just fuss with my acetate until I'm happy with it. And my glue has started to get tacky. You probably can't tell on camera, but it has started to get tacky, which means it's not too wet and it's not going to smear. You want to make sure you've got a good lineup happening. You want to line it up as best as you can to avoid smearing the glue onto the pretty acetate that you worked so hard to clean just now. And then I just kind of go around with my finger and give it just a little tap to make sure that that tacky glue starts to adhere to the acetate. Just kind of like that. And then I put it under my mouse to let, you know, the weight of the mouse kind of help it bond. And now we have, what we have left is our 110-pound white cardstock frame piece, and then we have our foam frame piece. We're still letting this acetate piece dry, but this should be nice and dry now. And so what we're going to do is glue our foam piece down to your solid piece of cake. Or your solid die cut, I should say, because you might not be doing a birthday cake. So this is the way that it goes. So I'm going to start adding my glue. Again, even with the foam, I like to do a solid, consistent line all around the edges so that no sequins can escape once we add them in. Just doing a solid, consistent line of wet adhesive. I highly recommend Barely Arts or Art Glitter Glue. They're both available on Amazon, and I'll link those in the description box down below, just in case you're interested. But there we have it. I'm going to let this start to get tacky before I lay it down. So there's not really much to do at this point in time, but like I said, if you're impatient, which you should never be impatient when you're trying to make a shaker embellishment, but if you do smooth the glue out like this, it will start to get tackier faster because it's in a thinner layer. That makes sense. And I like to give it, you know, 2.5 minutes, but that time will vary depending on, you know, the temperature in your house and the humidity. So anyways, we're letting this get tacky. It is starting to tack up, I can tell. And I'm going to lay this down and line it up the best I can. The foam is always finicky. It will never lay down perfectly, so don't stress yourself out about it. Just do what you can in the allotted amount of time the glue gives you. And now my acetate layer should be dry, so I'm gonna move that, and I'm gonna let that dry for a moment. I am gonna fuss with this acetate again because it gets dusty that quick. In fact, I need to find my oh, there it is. Okay, we're good. My powder tool, we're gonna need that here in a second. And I never did find a sequins mix. Oops. This one will work. That one will work. But I thought I had like an all pink one, but I have no idea where I put it. So this is what we're sticking with. I made it to go with Woodland Grove from Maggie Holmes. Okay. Now we have our base, our sturdy base layer with the 110 and the pink cardstock and the foam. And then not attached yet, we have our pink glitter cardstock glued to our acetate. And now we have this extra die cut. This is the 110-pound cardstock that I made you cut out the frame in. And most people don't do this, but I will tell you now, the reason that I cut this layer out is because acetate and foam, they don't like to stick together. I don't know if you were aware of that, but they really don't. And when you try to put acetate and foam together, it slides really easily, it makes a mess really easily, so on and so forth. And so I cut this extra layer of the cardstock out, and then I glue it on top of the foam. That way there is a cardstock layer between the acetate and the foam, and the foam sticks to the cardstock easier and the acetate sticks to the cardstock easier, so it's a win-win. And you get just that little bit of extra thickness for your shaker. That's not really important, but it is a little added bonus. So like I said, the main reason I do this is because the acetate and foam just don't like to stick together. So we've got the foam down. Now I'm laying down this cardstock layer just so that the acetate and the foam don't have to touch each other and make a mess. I think because it makes less of a mess, like I said, it's one extra die cut that you have to do, but it's less finicky than trying to get your acetate and your foam to stick together. Okay, so look, these layers are definitely not lining up right, and it's not ever going to be perfect no matter how much I fuss with it, but I'm letting it roll off my shoulders because I know once I add my glitter cardstock frame there on top, no one's going to notice that. They're just going to see the pretty glitter cardstock, right? It's hardly noticeable when you add that. Like looking at it now, you can see that the cardstock and the foam don't line up. But as soon as you add that top layer, it makes a big difference. So no stressing. Okay. You see there's foam sticking over the edge here. There's foam sticking over the edge here. These little drips aren't lining up. but it's okay. I am going to put my mouse here again to let that glue start to adhere together. And I'm going to get my powder tool ready. I need to find a spoon. I didn't think this far ahead in the video. Oh wow, we're almost at an hour. But I was giving all the tips and tricks and knowledge that I knew, trying to pass it along to whoever wants to listen to me. I sure hope you learned something, or will learn something in the next bit. Okay. Now, I like my powder tool. This is from EK Tools. I believe I can link it in the description box down below. I think you can get it on Amazon. So I will do that if I can find it. But this is just baby powder with a little brush on the end. Mine's old and broken. This thing comes right out, but it still works. Baby powder reduces the amount of static within your shaker, because if you weren't aware, foam creates static and sequins create static. So what I like to do is go around the edges, the inside edges of my foam with my powder tool to reduce the static of the foam. I go around the edges like so. And then I just do a light dusting on the inside where my sequins is going to go. These little pieces are not sticking together, and the sequins could get stuck in there, so I don't like that. I'm trying to get it to glue together. I don't like my sequins getting stuck anywhere, which is another reason why I am so consistent on making sure that each level that I glue together, like each two pieces that I glue together, are nice and dry before I move on to the next step. Because the last thing that you want is for, like, if I were to add the sequins now, I guarantee you that there is some glue seepage seeping out around these edges that we can't even see with our bare eyes because it's such a small amount, but that sequins will stick to it like that. And nobody likes a shaker that doesn't shake when all of the sequins are stuck all around the edge of the embellishment, the inside of the embellishment. That means somebody either added the sequins before the glue was dry, and or they shook it before everything was nice and dry. Once they add, so I make sure each time I glue something, I give it a good 3 to 5 minutes for that glue to dry. And now that I've done the powder tool, we can add our sequins in here. Oh, good. There are some seed beads in here too, so we'll get that fun shaker sound. I'm just going to add a little bit to each little compartment here. That looks pretty good. And now what I'm going to do is hold this down on opposite edges with 2 fingers, like so. So you want to be really careful that you don't knock your sequins out. And once again, I'm going to add a thin but consistent line of wet adhesive all the way around the edge. Thin but consistent. You don't want any gaps where the sequins can fall through. You don't want to get too awfully close to the inside edge where the sequins are, because one little bump like that can make them jump up and stick to your glue. there's that bottom layer, and now I'm going to do this top layer here. Get these little drippies so the sequins don't get stuck in between. I'm going to be really mad if my sequins get stuck in between the foam and the cardstock. I worked so hard. Okay, the number one rule is when you're adding any acetate to glue, you let that glue start to get tacky before you lay it down. So once again, I'm going to fuss with my acetate, make sure all the dust and smudges are off of it while I let my glue get tacky. Patience is key when making a shaker embellishment, if you ask me anyway. Don't rush. If you're in a hurry, don't just wait until you have time to, actually sit down and focus and um take your time and make sure each layer is nice and dry. Don't rush the process. I'm gonna zoom in here a little bit if it'll let me. There we go. And probably can't tell, but my glue is starting to get tacky. My acetate is as good as it's gonna get. There's still a little smudge here, but the acetate never ends up perfect either. I've learned to accept it. And like I said, this isn't gonna line up perfectly because that foam has a mind of its own. But once you add the pretty glitter cardstock or the top layering piece, you just don't notice those imperfections so much. You really don't. You can see it because I pointed it out, but I could take a photo of this just like it is now and post it on Instagram, and I wouldn't get any negative comments. I know that much. At least nobody says anything. And then people come to me for advice for shakers, so I must be doing something right anyways. Oh goodness gracious, guys. So there is our shaker embellishment from start to finish. Now, it's so tempting to, once you finally get through, you finally get done with the entire process, the first thing you want to do is shake it, but please don't. Like I said, nobody likes a shaker that doesn't shake and has all the sequins glued around the inside edges. If you shake it before that glue is dry, I promise it's going to be ugly. So just be patient and wait. I would say a good 5 to 10 minutes to make sure everything is completely dry. You can set something heavy on top of it to help it dry and adhere together. Okay, I'm looking over my notes again and make sure I didn't miss anything. Like I said, I will list. This video makes it sound like a really long and tedious process because it's been like an hour, but it's because I was adding in my tips and tricks as I went. Once I will type out the process steps that I take, and you'll see it's really not that difficult. So look out for that and give it a try and see if you finally can get comfortable with making shaker embellishments. I'd really love to know if you learned something. Please comment down below if you did, or if this video was helpful for you. Let me know. I love to hear that what I'm doing actually helps people. So there we have it, guys. There is our sequin shaker embellishment. I'm not going to shake it just yet because I want it to finish drying and I don't want my sequins to stick to anything. But thank you so much for watching. If you have questions that I did not cover in this video about Shaker Embellishments, please feel free to leave them in the comments down below and I'll get back to you. Or if you don't want to leave a public comment, you can always DM me on Instagram. I'm at your crafty BFF over there as well. Or you can even email me. I'll have my email listed in the description box as well. So, yes, like I was saying, thanks so much for watching. Have a great day. Hope this was helpful. Bye.